I want you to breathe. I want you to breathe. I want you to breathe.
Hello, friends. We're back. We're Black and Curious. I'm Kandron.
Oh Lord. Hey y'all, it's Dehjai. Sorry.
Now, so we are continuing the conversation about the relationship with yourself. This time, we're talking about accountability with yourself, and how does that look for you?
Child.
Uh, yeah, and boundaries, setting boundaries with yourself. How does that look for you?
I feel like everything is day to day.
Fair.
Um, the accountability piece of it all is like, I don't know that this is kind of like that conversation that we were having with Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe before that, where you were like, I don't know that I've ever thought about the bucket thing. It was with Catherine. You were like, I don't know that I've ever thought about it like that, but that's a word. Um, for me, it's the accountability thing. I've never really thought about what I hold myself accountable to and how I do so, because I am such a like very structured person, in the sense I'm really, really hard on myself. So like in that alone, I know that there's some sort of accountability to be had, but I've not processed how and what and when it is that I'm keeping myself accountable to something.
That's fair.
For the boundaries, I feel like I have the same answer. I've never really had to think about it.
No, I get it. I think for me, it's being honest with myself about my negative traits and not beating myself down about it, but like making an action plan about it. So using something very kind of innocuous, I guess, something very light. Um, I'm a procrastinator. I'm a procrastinator at my core. I have procrastinated my entire adult and pre-adult childhood,
My whole life,
adulthood,
period.
probably before I got here. I was procrastinating. And I am just a procrastinator. So, like, I'm starting to reckon with the fact that some of the things that have happened in my life have been because I procrastinated, and trying to address how I would like to move forward in a space that does not involve procrastination. And, like, honestly, some of that is building in time to procrastinate. Like, so that's the other thing with me. It's like I'm not necessarily, and this is something I came up with, like, or realized a few, I guess, like a couple of years ago. It's like it's not always about necessarily attacking something head on. Sometimes it's just this is who you are, so you have to build in space for you to be you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, with me, a calendar, for instance, I'm going to try to break it down to as many small pieces as I can. I'm going to write everything down so that I can try to address things in a timely fashion. Now, might I still be up on Wednesday night working on that thing that's due on Thursday? Yes. But at least I have started it.
Child.
So, and even at work, like there are strict timelines at work. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will I will start something that's not due, like, kind of at the end of the day when my brain cells aren't really working anymore anyways. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just start kind of doing a little bit of something on those other things so that I know I'm going to run down to the last day. However, at least I'm not starting from a blank slate.
I So even like the years that I have tried to do like a calendar, or to like set myself like an agenda for stuff I need to get done, or even like recently I purchased like a digital budget or whatever, where you can
Mm,
fill out the budget
oh, I
every
don't
month.
budget.
I don't budget, but I was like, you know what? I need to see where my money is going. And I budget, but not in the traditional sense. Like,
Same.
and so I wanted to, I've been on this mission to get better with my money so that I could work through my money traumas and not be so anxious about it and whatever, whatever. So I bought this thing that I plugged in the numbers to the month that I bought it. And then I looked at it again when I was talking to my financial advisors, and I have not looked at that shit since. Um, and then I do the same with like I'll buy a planner or like a little journal situation like this. Bought this joint at the top of this year. It is brand spanking new for all intents and purposes. I think I wrote in here one time. Matter of fact,
Can I have
not
that?
for
Is it
the.
my favorite color?
I mean, I wrote some stuff in here. Now that I spin through it, I mean, listen, I'll give it to you, but it's gonna have some random shit in here that ain't gonna make no sense. But like, I'm just like, girl, there's nothing in here besides people's birthdays.
Yeah. I think for me, like breaking it down has really helped. So, like, when I have a task that I have to do, I will try sometimes to like break it down into all the parts and then assign the parts a day so
Yeah,
that
that's
I'm
what I've
kind
done
of,
better.
I do better with that.
Mhm.
And that kind of helps me along a little bit. Um,
Matter
yeah.
of fact, oh, my thing is sitting on. Hold on, y'all. The thing. So shout out to Maddie James because
Yes. Shout out to Maddie James because that's who I was thinking about.
she put me on to this thing. I have literally jacked up this whole setup this computer is sitting on. So if y'all are lopsided right now, sorry. I'll face it in a minute. Anyway, she uses these.
Yes.
And basically you just plan your meal out for the week and then you put your whatever you need to purchase on the other side and then you tear this off and then you go. I have used this a little bit more frequently, not as much considering that I bought 2 of these. Like I was going to use it every fucking week. I have not, but this does help me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I feel like I've been searching for years for ways to be more organized so that I could be accountable in the way in which that I desire to be, but it just don't work for me. It's like, I'm very much a fly by the seat of my pants. So like, I like these little, trying to fix the setup. I like these little notepads because it does help me to be mindful when I'm shopping, especially grocery shopping. Buy only what's on the list, child. We don't need to be perusing the aisles like, ooh, this will be good with that. Like, girl, if that's not in one of the meals that you're making this week, then no. So like that's a boundary that I've set with myself by using these little notepads for your weekly eating plans. All right. Yeah. Hopefully we are together. Oh, I mean, you can't see nothing, child. It's just tank top.
I don't know. I was just the thing was moving, but yeah, I think like part of it, yeah, just for me, I have got to set boundaries with myself. Oh, another thing that I realized about myself, and I think it TMI, whatever. I think it has something to do with like, and I've heard people say this, how they like plan their productivity based on their menstrual cycle.
I mean, that's a good idea.
And so
I'm about to start doing my like grocery shopping and like the way I eat around your like I think it's called cycle syncing or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
So that
I've heard people talk about that.
I'm like, yeah. Girl, where was this science years ago?
But also I'm realizing like because I have so many things going on and I'm doing 150 things, it's like I can't go at that rate all the time. So 1 week a month, I just give myself grace to just do what I can and do the best I can and keep it pushing. And sometimes it's more than a week, but I try to do my best when I'm in the game and when my head's in the game versus like, you know, just trying to push myself to do X, Y, and Z because that's just going to lead me to get burned out. So I think a lot of it is a balance between like trying not to burn out, but also like trying to be productive and being honest with myself about what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I'm not accomplishing that, why not? And, you know, and in implementing things to help me get there.
Yeah. I think now that we've kind of talked through this a little bit, I think the biggest boundary that I have created for myself, like a life boundary, was around like work and like the burnout isms that I've had. Yeah. And me saying basically I'm never going to allow myself to get to the place where I'm so low that I lose 100%. Myself. And I have done that before. And I got really, really close to doing that this year. I think the difference between this year and the previous year is that I had the tragedies happen that actually sat me down. And then I just was like, you know what, maybe I do need to sit down, period.
Absolutely.
Ironically enough, I was listening to the Red Cat Way podcast. Shout out to Catherine, who was on with us in our last conversation. And they were talking about like hope in their recent podcast that they posted. I'll try to make sure I link it. But they were talking about hope, and then they were saying, you know, like hope, hope's counterpart is also grief and sadness. And so they were talking about Red had lost her dog either a couple of months ago or last year, and she had given herself like 4 weeks to be in that experience of like sadness and so on and forth. And she was saying that she allotted herself that time, like that was her boundary, like she allotted herself that time to heal. And then in being in that place is when she realized, like, you know, damn, I'm really sad about the loss of my fur baby, but I'm also have enough space here to grieve all these other things. And that is why she ended up being, you know, down for as long as she did, in addition to being sad about the loss of her family member, because fur babies are family members too. It's also the factor of like, you know, you haven't given yourself time to feel any of the other shit that's actually happened to you. And so now when you're feeling something, the psyche and the body is like, okay, now's the time for everything to rush in because we can
feel everything.
Yeah. And her statement of that really made me kind of reconcile some things within myself. Like in this last season, literal, like the summer season going into the fall, I definitely, having the tragedies at the top of the summer and then dealing with my own burnout, there were things that came up through in therapy and in conversations with you that made me realize, like, and then hearing that today, like, you know what, me saying, you know, I've never been this depressed in my life, I've never been this sad in my life, like I don't understand what the fuck's happening. What was happening is that I had all this stuff happen over the last 2 years that I did not feel. Like I was in the hospital for a week, almost near death experience in 2021, and then I was out for 2 months and then went right back to work like nothing had ever happened. Then both of my parents had emergency medical procedures or situations that happened, and then boom, I had another medical emergency myself at the top of the year, and I just kept on going. And it's like, that is not how the body works, but we tend to push ourselves. So like my boundary that I was not sticking to was like never to let myself get to a place where I feel so low, but it happened because I just kept going. I think the lack of awareness is what takes place when you are like averting your boundaries, so to speak, or like kind of bumping up against them and then kind of bumping back the other way. I feel like I hit the boundary, but like I felt like I didn't have time to deal with the boundary.
And then the thing is, you know, we're taught to, you know, you just push past just a little bit, and it's like, no, you don't.
That's not how it works. What you pushing past, you end up pushing down, and it's gonna come up eventually.
Correct. And like at a certain point, yes, there is time for like persistence and, you know, the grind, TM. But a lot of times you also just need to sit down. If your body is telling you it's time for a rest, like you don't, and I guess this is also part of a boundary, is like you don't have to, an accountability really is like, if your body is telling you to rest, like, okay, you take a rest. It doesn't mean you have to be done with it, or it doesn't mean you have to stop for a week. Sometimes you just need a day, but like if you don't take the day, you're going to need the week. So like that's the difference, you know. And also I know like I've set boundaries around, I have a kind of an excessive personality. Like I will continue to do something until I'm tired of it, or until like it doesn't serve me anymore. So I
share that
transparently, I've had to set boundaries, especially with the pandemic and being in the house and all that. I had to set boundaries with myself around alcohol because I was over serving myself in the beginning there. So having to implement, even if it's like, that's another thing, like cooking, that was one that was getting me all the time, because like, oh, I'm having a little glass of wine while I'm cooking. And it's like, by the time you have a glass of wine while you're cooking, have a glass of wine while you're eating, and have a glass of wine while you're sitting down, you drink a half bottle of wine, depending on how heavy your pores are.
Yes.
Like, you cannot do that every day. You can't do that every day. So it's
And
like
then you'd be
you
like,
have
what the
to,
hell? Didn't I just buy that
right.
bottle?
So it's like implementing some sober days in there,
Yeah.
or like having that conversation with myself of like, do I really, what is it that I'm getting out of this drink right now? Like sometimes you need the drink and you know why you need the drink, but sometimes you're just drinking because you're bored, and like maybe that's not a good practice. Maybe that's not a good practice. You know, it's just like stuff like that. Um, big and small are ways to like create some accountability and honor some boundaries within yourself, that I think that a lot of times when we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about our boundaries with other people, and that we also need to remember we have to have boundaries with
With
ourselves
ourselves.
as
Totally.
well. Yeah.
Totally agree. Y'all drop down in the comments and let us know, how are you being accountable to yourself and what boundaries have you set? Also, let us know like if there anything that in those that you are not living up to, and how and why. Because clearly we all are in the same boat. We might just have different spots on the boat. Okay. And thank you for watching, of course. And please follow us on all of our social media. Check out blackandcurious.com, and we will see you in the next conversation. Bye, guys.
Bye.